Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about complementary and supplementary angles when given a visual and when given no visual. We're also going to talk about vertical angles. And lastly, we're going to discuss finding angle measures between intersecting lines. So let's start with complementary angles and supplementary angles with a visual. So just a quick reminder, your complementary angles are always going to add up to equal 90 degrees. Your supplementary angles are always going to add up to 180 degrees. And then if we have vertical angles, that's when they are opposite each other and congruent, which means the angle measures will be equal to each other. So here's a little cheat sheet on how to set up your angle problems. If you have complementary angles, then you're going to want to add the two angles together and set them equal to 90. If they are supplementary angles, meaning that they're on a straight line together, you're going to add them together and set them equal to 180. And then if you have vertical angles, you're going to set the angles equal to each other and then solve for x. Okay, let's take a look at some examples. So here it says, what is the measure of angle x? Well, clearly right here I can see this box, which means that, or the square, which means that it is a right angle, which makes these complementary angles. We know complementary angles add up to 90 degrees. So all you need to do to find x is just simply subtract 48 degrees. If you would like to set them up algebraically, you could just do 48 plus x equals 90. And then obviously to get x by itself, you're just subtracting 48 on both sides. That's the way you could set them up algebraically. And that leaves us with x equals 42 degrees. Here I can see a straight line. So we have two angles that are supplementary to each other because they form a straight line together. So one way you could do it is you could either subtract 156 from 180, or if you want to set them up algebraically, you can do x plus 156 equals 180. And then to solve for x, you're just going to subtract 156 on both sides. And that leaves you with x equals 24 degrees. Okay, here again we have another straight line, which means that we have supplementary angles. So all we need to do to find x is just subtract 48 from 180. Or if we want to do it algebraically, we can do x plus 48 equals 180. And then we're going to subtract 48 on both sides. That's going to leave us with x equals 132 degrees. So the next skill, there are no visuals. So they're not going to provide you with the visual, but they are going to tell you what type of angles they are. So as we can see here, it says angle A and angle B are complementary angles, and angle A measures 44 degrees. Well, we know complementary angles should equal 90 degrees. That means we have a right angle. So to solve it, you can either subtract 44 from 90, or you could set it up algebraically. X plus 44 equals 90. And then to find x, we would just subtract 44 on both sides. And that gives us x equals 46 degrees. Here they tell us that they are supplementary angles, so we know they add up to 180. If angle y measures 139 degrees, you can either subtract that from 180, or if we wanted to do it algebraically, I would just do x plus 139 equals 180, and then to solve for x, we would just subtract 139 on both sides, leaving us with x equals 41 degrees. Okay, the next skill is vertical angles. Remember, vertical angles are what are formed when we have intersecting lines. They are angles that are going to be directly across from each other or opposite each other. So they will not be next to each other. They're across from each other, and they are congruent or equal to each other. So these problems are interesting. It says, is x greater than, less than, or equal to 50 degrees? I'm actually going to erase this right here. So if you can tell, you'll notice that we don't have perfectly intersecting lines. This line right here is a little bit crooked. So if you think about it, if this line were to continue, it would normally go that way. So clearly this angle is bigger than it should be if they were perfectly intersecting lines, which means that x here is going to be greater than 50 degrees. If these were perfectly intersecting lines, these two vertical angles would be equal to each other. But since they're not perfectly intersecting and it's extended a little bit further to the left there, that means that x is greater than 50 degrees. Okay, let's take a look at this one. So again, we don't have perfectly intersecting lines here. I can see that this one should have continued going that way. And as you can see, the line is not perfectly intersecting, so it actually kind of makes x a smaller angle than it should be, which means that x is less than 27 degrees. Here I can see I have perfectly intersecting lines. Nothing looks crooked. So if they're perfectly intersecting lines, that means that your vertical angles will be congruent to each other, which means that x is going to equal 43 degrees. All right, the last one we're going to talk about today is finding angle measures between intersecting lines. These can be a little bit tricky, so you just have to be careful how you're looking at them. So I can see that right here I have a right angle, which means that down here is also going to be a right angle, which also means that right here is going to be a right angle, and it means that this would also be a right angle. So if this one right here is a right angle, that means that x plus 77 should equal 90 degrees. And to find x, we're just simply going to subtract 77 on both sides, and that's going to leave us with 13 degrees. You can also, if you notice that it's a 90-degree angle, you can also just take 77 and subtract it from 90, which is the other method that I did right here, and we get 13 degrees. Okay, here I can see that this angle right here and this angle right here are vertical angles. Okay, they're perfectly intersecting lines with this one and this one. So that means that they're equal to each other. Now they tell us that this one is 50 degrees and 20 degrees. So that means that together these two are 70 degrees, which means that x, excuse me, x will also be 70 degrees. Okay, here I can see I'm going to actually just highlight this line. I can see that I've got a straight line right here, which makes these three angles supplementary to each other. So that means all three angles should add up to equal 180 degrees. So as you can see over to the right, I've set up an algebraic equation. I've added 60 plus 80 plus x to equal 180. 60 and 80 is 140, so x plus 140 equals 180. And then when I subtract 140 on both sides, I end up with x equals 40 degrees. Okay, that does it for those 4 skills. The correlating note-taking packet pages are pages 21 through 29, just the top of the page. Again, you can also watch the videos in Khan Academy if you would like to see additional examples. Please feel free to take a screenshot of anything and email either Mr. Lab or myself with any questions that you have. Have a great day, everyone.